there was a particular day last year where it was similar to that. Me and Yamil were there, and we just went, right, we're just going to put on the biggest sun rays we can find. Like, these things were like 3-4 inch sun rays, and we absolutely, like, you couldn't trip fast enough. And I told one of the lads to put it on. 4 casts later, he was into a fish. We ended up with, I think, 8 fish between the 3 of us, all on sun rays. And the lads were, and everyone else was saying, no, you won't get fish today.
Hello and welcome to the Ireland on the Fly podcast about the people and places of fly fishing in Ireland. This week we're focusing on salmon and speak to 2 anglers who travel around Ireland and the world in pursuit of their favourite fish. Johnny, Casey and Yamil Turcuman not only catch salmon regularly but are also willing to try new methods to do so, and will be revealing some of the secrets of their success on the show. That's still to come, but first, Tom, the Orkneys, how was it?
Dara, it was fantastic. It was beyond my expectations. It just really was a fantastic week's fishing. One ticked off the bucket list finally, but just had some great fishing in a wonderful place with wonderful fish. And it was just really good. Done a few things from it, so hopefully we might do an episode on it and go more.
Did you get, actually, because I know you brought the microphones and stuff, did you manage to get a few interviews or some recordings?
Yeah, I got to chat to a couple of the lads up there. It was really interesting because we had, like, it was a real busman's holiday for me. We actually had gillies. And it was great. One of them was Norman Irvine. Anybody who's ever read Stan Headley, Norman features a lot because when Stan Headley was on the Orkneys, he fished with Norman all the time. And Norman was phenomenal, a phenomenal angler. Invented a lot of flies, invented the half hog. Really, really good angler. Fantastic gilly. With Stu Leslie and with Ken Kennedy as well. But the whole thing was absolutely fantastic. A wonderful place. Really looking forward to talking about it.
Yeah, it sounds like busman's holiday, like you said, but just something like you were saying, like just constantly in action the whole time. Was it like just...
Yeah, it was unreal. Like, we'll talk about it later. There was one morning there where on the first drift we boated 7 fish, lost 3 of them playing them, and bent into a few more. Then we did a drift after that, and on that drift we caught 1 fish and rose 2. And we turned to one another and said, God, that was awful quiet. You're
getting spoiled.
But it was just action all the time. It was just really, really good. Fantastic.
Brilliant. I can't wait to hear this. That's going to be a forthcoming episode for people. It'll be a bucket list episode, so be well worth listening out for. Can't wait for that. And in the meantime, we're going to be hearing from Yamil and Johnny on the salmon fishing. I have to say, I think talking to, they're 2 32-year-olds, really interesting. Yamil's from Argentina. Johnny's from a kind of, like you said, no fishing in his family. He's from Clare. Really interesting to hear how these 2 young guys just approached it with just such positive passion, and then also but just real kind of nearly like a clean slate, like, isn't it? Like,
oh, it's fantastic, and really fantastic to see the way they've gone about it, and we can sort of see how they've come at it because they haven't come from conventional salmon fishing backgrounds and how they've used that, and that really comes across in how they're successful in other methods. But one of the things the guy said, and Yamil actually says it, they want a sense of fun, and the sense of fun and their enjoyment from it, along with their passion. But the sense of fun was fantastic, and you could get it there when they try something different. When it works for them, how fantastic that is. I think it was just brilliant talking to them. Absolutely.
Do you know what? It was a breath of fresh air, and it kind of actually listen to them talk. Actually, reminded me a bit. I was thinking of Darren Maguire.
Yeah.
It's just the pure enjoyment they got from it, like, and it was just, I think it was near the end, I think Johnny saying about when we go blanking, as they call it, not fishing, we go blanking.
But it's great chatting to them because they are prepared to put up with the blanks, but they will try different things, and it's when they reap the rewards from that.
And it's actually working for them. That's the whole point. Like, you'll hear a story from Johnny talking about, I think it was the water was coloured and high, and and then he actually says do the opposite of whatever else is doing,
and it worked.
And it worked, like, so. It's it's a really, I really enjoyed it, and I want to catch up with them again because, like I said, it's like a breath of fresh air chatting to them, and they're young guys into it. So it's, if if more salmon anglers could be like them, I tell you, we'd be in a healthy state.
And not like us old farts.
Well, like I said, speak for yourself, Tom. You know. Young at heart.
Yeah.
But look, we'll get back to the salmon now with Johnny and Yamil. And I first asked Johnny to tell us actually about their recent trip to the Gaula in Norway.
In one word, what was it like? Vast, I suppose, is a good way to describe it. Yeah, flying in, guys. You're flying in on kind of prop planes into Trondheim, and it's just as far as the eye can see is just wilderness and lakes and rivers, and you're just going like, oh my god. There's just so many places to fish, and obviously the Gaula is known for its bigger fish. It's not quite known as a numbers river, but the fish that they have in it are really, really big. So we were about 30 minutes, about 30 minutes, 30k upstream from Trondheim, which is where the fjord comes in. And there's another very famous river called the Orkla, and that comes in off the same fjord. So the Gaula and the Orkla are quite close together.
Yamil, did it live up to expectations? And so, like Johnny said there, you know, it's not necessarily a numbers game. The big fish. How did you just get on?
So for me, I mean, for everybody in the trip, it was our first time fishing a big river, trying to get that big fish, you know, that we all dream of. So first thing I think for everybody in the trip, it was just getting used to the 15 footers, the 10 weight rods. This is something that we don't use much in Ireland, or at least I don't use that kind of gear. So it took me a day, or even 2 days, I'll say, to get used to the lines, to get used to the rods, even though I practiced a bit before the trip. The river was in low water when we got there, so we were expecting to have probably a bit more water, given the fact that it was the fourth week of the season, and normally, you know, you get, based on what we talked to anglers who fished it for many years before, you know, the third and the fourth week in June, it's usually the best time to fish it. So yeah, we had very low water conditions, so we had to adjust, try to change tactics, you know, fish floating lines, longer leaders, small flies. We saw plenty of fish, but we were just unlucky with the conditions. Just the river got the water and started to basically fish well by the time we were leaving. So again, that happens when you go to a place for the first time. You know, it's all about learning, getting to know the place, getting to know the river. So my expectations were met in a way, but we didn't get the fish, you know, so we'll have to come back.
Should have been there next week.
Yeah, exactly. It's always like that.
If you want a good summary of salmon fishing, so we hammered the place for 4 days, right? We saw some dolphins, like 30, 40 pound fish, like literally like dolphins, like they come up through the water like this. And that's when the locals tell you they're running fish. They're just head down, and you have a very, very small chance of catching them. But the very last minute of the very last day, me and Connor, one of the lads that was there with us, had fished down this pool. And a guy from Finland just arrived by himself, and his wife told him, right, you have a couple of hours to go fishing, so, you know, off you go. So he jumped in behind me, and I mean literally 10 meters behind me, right? And I covered this pool for the whole week. And
oh, I see where this is going.
Look, keep going anyway, Johnny. Keep going.
I turned around to Connor and I went, right, I'm done, I'm out of here. I didn't even fish the pool down fully for this last time. And literally, as I turned around to Connor and went like this, you know, to make a signal like, let's quit, your man just looks at me and goes, yeah. And I was like, oh, you're like, you have to be kidding me. And yeah, he hooked like 17, 18 pounds, just like hauled it onto the beach. And I was just like, I was literally like, we had cast fly after fly after fly, same color, same size, at the exact spot that he was fishing 2 minutes earlier. And there you go. So that's salmon fishing to a T.
That is my experience of salmon fishing. That happens to me in Ireland as well. Like, the same fly, you're doing everything exact, and then the fly, sorry, excuse me,
exactly.
the bastard behind it. It's like, oh my god. But like, even just standing there in the river, seeing those 30, 40 pounders must have been just, your heart must have been in your
They're
mouth.
phenomenal. They're phenomenal fish. We were on the opposite bank one of the days, and one of them broke the water in front of me, and I nearly fell into the river. And it's such like, I got such a fright, because it's like it's a different noise. When you hear like a 40-pound fish slapping the water or tail slapping in the water, it's like not like, you know, it's not like grills jumping about a pool. It's like a human body like jumping into a river, you know. They're phenomenal to see. I can only imagine what it's like actually trying to play one on a rod, but that just pretty much from what we heard, they just turn around and go, right, I'm off back to sea, and you just have to sit there and try and play pretty much a 40-pound fish. Can play, you know, play it up to an hour and a half trying to land it.
My God. And Yamil, has it given you that taste of like, I need to come back here? I have to.
100%, Darren. 100%. Like we were even talking to the people from the cabins, the lodge that we were staying, or trying to book something for next year already, because you know, especially when you have to leave by the time the river it's in perfect conditions, it's like I need to come back. But yeah, the idea is to come back next June, hopefully with a better luck and better conditions. But yeah, there's great potential and a great chance of having that, you know, fish of a lifetime there, because we've seen them. They were just not taken, but we've seen them.
Well, I tell you what, maybe we'll bring it back to Ireland then. And just in terms of, so tell us, maybe just give us your own background and your own involvement with salmon.
Of course, just to give a little bit of background information. So I'm from Argentina. I moved to the US when I was 15 years old, and I ended up in Ireland because of work with my wife. She's Spanish, and I moved to Spain last week. So I've been moving quite a lot in the past few years. And when it comes to fishing, I learned how to fly fish when I was around 8 or 9, 10 years old. My grandfather taught me how to tie flies, do a bit of fly fishing back home in Argentina as well. So I always had that passion about fly fishing. While I was living in the US, in Florida, I did it for like sea fishing, tarpon, permit. And then when I moved to Ireland, I discovered a great playground, plenty of options, plenty of lakes, plenty of rivers. So I'm actually going to miss that now in Spain. But yeah, that's basically my background in fishing.
Where in Argentina, Yamil?
So I was born in Mendoza, which is the wine country area, similar enough to the Napa Valley area in the US. So that's there in Mendoza.
Is it kind of like rivers? Is that the kind of fly fishing?
So most of the rivers we have there, they're mountain rivers. So you only get to fish them late in the season, because early in the season they're too colored and high water. So you have rainbow trout, brook trout, and you also have brown trout. We don't have any salmon in that part of the country. The sea trout fishing and the salmon fishing, it's down in Patagonia, down in the probably southernmost part of the country.
Yeah, because that's the thing. People hear, you know, fly fishing Argentina, they think of Patagonia and those and the kind of the monster fish down there. Is it common up around Mendoza fly fishing, or was it quite unusual?
No, there's actually a big community. There is a big school actually, who basically brings a lot of people together, and they teach people how to cast, how to basically tie flies, a lot of knowledge about entomology. So there's a big community about like around fly fishing in general in that part of the country.
Wow, fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. And tell us then, when you got to Ireland, then was it kind of salmon that kind of, because it was so new, so different? Or?
I'll tell you the story how everything started. So I contact back then, that was in 2018. I contact Connor Arnold, because I never picked up a double hander in my life before. I always fish with a single hander. So I contact Connor Arnold. He's based in Cork, Waterford. So I went down to basically get the basics, learn how to cast the double hander. And as we were practicing, he said, like, just take a break. And you know, if you want to get your nymphing rod or a single hander, just to have a break. And while I was taking that break, I hooked the fish on a 2-weight. And he was like, all right, we need to go back to the double hander to see if we can get the fish on the actual double hander. But that was very, very interesting. And since then, it just took from there. I was basically hooked into salmon fishing.
And Johnny, give us your own.
I suppose I don't have quite the story.
Yeah,
history
not as exotic, no.
not as exotic as Yamil. I'm from the west of Clare here, guys. So I have absolutely no history of fly fishing or fishing in my family at all. So we kind of grew up sea fishing here for pollock, mackerel, all the usual spots. And I kind of got like quite into bass fishing when I was younger, but mainly all on the lure. And as we were in, you'd be in the estuary looking around, you'd see all these fish rising, and I was always like, I'm going to get them someday. I'm going to get them someday. And I remember one day out of nowhere, I was in the tackle shop and I just said to hell with it and bought a fly rod. And pretty much just started from there. Probably 10, 12, 13 years ago now maybe. And pretty much, unfortunately, we didn't have any schools around here to teach people to fly fish. So it was
you have to go to Mendoza for that.
Guys. Pretty much all self-taught. So kind of started from the very, very bottom and just slowly and surely made my way up through kind of bass, sea bass fishing, sea fishing to trout. We have the River Fergus. It was once quite a famous salmon fishery. It actually goes through our farm, and it's got still has a great healthy stock of brown trout. And I still remember the first few fish I got in the dry fly, or the first one I got in the nymph, and that sort of stuff. So not as cool as Yamil's story, but pretty much it brought me then to salmon fishing. And I suppose Yamil brought me to salmon fishing more than anything else.
Sorry to interrupt. Just tell the story about how we met and the first time we went fishing. I think it's priceless.
Okay, so we were at an event, guys. It was a screening of Artificial. It was an event Patagonia ran a few years ago in Dublin about the wild fish and the fish farm industry and that. And we basically, I'll go into a bit more detail later on, but I come from an area where unfortunately salmon stocks have collapsed. So I said, look, I was based in Dublin for a few years and I met Yamil at this event. So we went to a place there. I know you've been there a few times. I said to Yamil, come on, look, we were chatting after it. I said, I'll bring him to the Dodder. And so we went to the Dodder below Ashton's, and Yamil hooked this absolute pig of a fish at the falls there in Ashton's, like a big, big, big fish. And I was like, right, well, here we go. I think I'd fished the Dodder for like a year, and I didn't even know there was fish that big in it, to be honest. But look, that's where we kind of met. And from there, we just kind of picked up Yamil kind of was like, he's a good man for contacts and contacting people. And we just kind of started the salmon fishing from there, really.
That's amazing. Tell me, Johnny, when you bought your fly rod, you just went back out to the sea?
Pretty much, Tom. Yeah.
Went in and just had at it. And come here, how did that go for you, first off?
I like, and you're literally like, how does this even work? Because you're so used to casting a spinner for so many years. You're just kind of flailing around the place with it, and slowly but surely, Tom, we're quite lucky. We've a very good stock of sea trout in the estuary here in Lahinch, and we also have slob trout, the trout that kind of, they stay in brackish water most of their lives. And they're very free rising, and they will take anything. You could put a piece of tinsel on a hook and they'll take it. So I remember it was a 9'6", 7'8" Witchwood, and I think I fished it for 2 years solid. Didn't use it for everything, for lakes, for sea fishing, for salmon fishing, for everything. It broke unfortunately a few years ago, but just pretty much I've been to one casting lesson in my whole life, and I could say myself at this stage, I would consider myself a pretty decent caster at this stage. But again, we're lucky now. We live in the days of YouTube. So YouTube was my Bible. I poured over anything that could be found on YouTube about fly fishing in Ireland. I've probably watched it.
Both of you are young. Like, what age is?
I'm 32.
Same as.
So growing up,
Whippersnappers.
We sound like old farts here, Tom.
That's because we are, Dara.
Speak for yourself. But Johnny, growing up, did your friends fly fish? Because for me growing up,
they all think I'm absolutely mad. They just don't understand the concept of this whatsoever. I remember they'd be missing nights out or whatever to get up and go fishing, and they're just like, remember they'd say, you're just standing in a river all day by yourself, and I'm like, yeah. And they're like, and you're happy to do that? And I was like, yeah.
That's exactly. This is the exact conversation.
Exactly to a T. So the only friends that that I've met through that fish are people I've met through fly fishing. None of the rest of my friends fly fish. A couple of the guys would throw a few feathers on and go for mackerel and pollock, you know, every year, once or twice, but that's about the extent of it.
But when you were at it in Mendoza in the school, was there, like, did you have friends who fly fished your age?
Not really. It's funny because I started going to a fly shop that they were having some kind of like a workshop on Saturdays, and the average age I would say was 45, and I was
ancient.
like, yeah,
Still whippersnappers, Dara.
but I was only 10 or 11 years old, and I was there on a Saturday casting. I remember an 8-weight rod just because it was stiff enough that I could just basically cast the line.
Yeah.
But yeah. It was very usual to see, you know, young people with a fly rod.
I think we should start like a special club, you know, like a AA type, you know, Fly Anglers Anonymous. Like if you're under the age of 35, like or whatever.
My name's Johnny. I'm a fly fisher.
Yeah.
It's a bit of that. But tell us, lads, so, you know, you've obviously done lots of different types of fishing, and Tom, I think you might be interested in this as well, because you're a brown trout man, you know, and can understand that. You're on the lake, the shores of Corrib. You guys have had the chance to fish all different types of fish, myself as well. What is it about the salmon that you found yourself gravitating towards as the fish to go after? Because again, you have to be nuts, I think, to go after salmon, especially in Ireland like these days, you know. What was it, to tell us?
In my case, it was pretty much the same. I was a trout angler until I hooked my first salmon. And one thing that I really enjoy, well, salmon fishing, it's basically I was trying to get them the same way I was getting trout, especially with nymphs. I spent a bit of time in Spain where they're big into nymphing, you know, and they actually do a lot of nymphing for salmon. And I learned within a couple of months, I learned a few things that when I moved to Ireland, I was like, I want to try this in Ireland because maybe, you know, people are not trying it or maybe they're not doing it. And I wouldn't say it was successful, but at least I was getting fish in places or times when the water was too low or places where people wouldn't even have a cast. So that got me thinking that, you know, well, the trout techniques, if a way, they could work for salmon as well. So even the fact that I didn't know much about salmon fishing, I just went that way. So my friends, we have a nice group of friends. They were always making fun of me in a way that I was going with my 2-weight or 4-weight rod in places where they could be a salmon, you know, in the pool. And I wanted that challenge. I really wanted to try to get a fish on live gear. So, yeah.
So it's kind of interesting, though, that you came from kind of to Ireland. You didn't have any kind of, you know, preconceptions. You know,
exactly.
Which was kind of like refreshing, I suppose. You weren't brought up with, oh, this is the way you do it and this is the way we've always done it, like, and that probably helped in many respects, like.
Well, I found that most of the salmon fishing community in Ireland, it's very traditional. So it's down and across, same flies, same kind of patterns, which is great because it works. But at the same time, I think some anglers, especially older generations, are a bit reluctant to change or try different things. And for me, like, I'm the type of angler that if I get a fish on a fly, I've changed that fly right away to see if I can get another fish in a different fly, which it's the opposite to many anglers that I've met in the riverbank, that they're like, they basically stick to what works and that's it. So I don't know, I enjoy more trying to get a fish with a different technique rather than get maybe 2-3 fish with the same fly. I don't know, it sounds dumb, but I enjoy it more.
No, but it's trying to think outside the box and approach the problem in a different way, I suppose. And we might delve into that in a little bit, the kind of different techniques and different ways of approaching. Tell us, Johnny, just in terms of for yourself.
I suppose one line there, the tug is the drug.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, as we were speaking there, like we've got some really good brown trout fishing here in Clare in certain spots. You know, we're targeting them at the moment with streamers and that, and we're getting some pretty chunky, like up to 7-8 pound fish, sight fishing for them, and that's amazing. But there's just something, like I was out on Sunday just gone, and I was in a pool, and I knew I knew there was fish in the pool. I couldn't see them, but I just like, we have a friend that swears he can smell salmon in the pool, but we'll talk about that later. But I just knew, in a particular spot that there's going to be a fish in the pool. And yeah, I suppose going back to Yamil there, Darren, Tom, like Yamil has really like almost not quite revolutionized, but changed a lot of people's thoughts on how you can catch salmon in Ireland. I know people are looking at stuff that he's caught them on, and we'll talk about that later. But I had his mind, and I had his voice in the back of my head going, okay, if this was Yamil, what would he do here? So people had fished the pool all day and no one had a touch. So everyone was saying, oh, the water's coloured, you need like a big, orange fly or something big, size 10, size 8, get it down. So I did the complete opposite. I found the smallest fly I could in my fly box, tiny size 16 willy gun with literally a couple of strands on it. Put that on, and I think 4 casts down the pool, I was into like almost 9-pound fish, and I could see the lads were like, how did you, what I mean? Like they'd covered the fish. So yeah, just that's it for me. It's the thrill of trying to catch a fish that doesn't feed in fresh water. No one knows why, salmon take flies. No one knows why they do it. It's these incredible fish that leave, as fry and leave as smolts, feed off the coast of Greenland for a year or two, come back to their native spawning rivers, and we have a chance to catch them. So yeah, it is the most addicting feeling. Like you can cast and cast and cast, and what are they known as the fish of 10,000 casts? But you just have to remember, you will eventually get one. There'll be a time will come where you hit a pool that no one else has fished, or for whatever reason, a fish will look at a fly and go, right, I'm having that. And just that feeling of swinging a fly or stripping a fly and then just bang, and you're right, here we go. It's very hard to encapsulate that for any form of fishing, for me anyway.
Well, we had a guy, Roy Pierce, he was on the show with us before, and he used to always say, because Roy, like myself, is a trout fisherman, but he used to say, you've sold your soul for salmon. And because you get that with trout fishermen, and they would suddenly start salmon fishing, and you'd never see them again. That was it.
They don't tell you about the blanks, though, Tom.
What?
They don't tell you about the blanks and the heartbreak.
Well, there's never any blanks trout fishing, Never.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting chatting to both of you, and we will get onto this, but both of you have come from a non-conventional fishing background. Definitely you have, Yamil. And you yourself, Johnny, like starting off fly fishing.
As you have a blank slate. I'd no one to teach me or no one to show you what to do. So it's just, self-taught.
And like if you'd have gone to people with these ideas before you tried them, they would have said,
not in a million years.
Lads. Yeah, but you see, you've gone and tried them. But it's great, fantastic.
Tom, it's a bit like the boobies or the woolly buggers, or the what you were saying about in terms of the tactics on the carb, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, like you tell people you catch on carb now on a booby, and they just go, no, it's not right. It's not right. You shouldn't be doing that. And
your next drift now, right? Late in the season, right? When you're on a drift and you're on a feeding line, right? I'm telling you, get the biggest articulated streamer you can from Keith, right? And just chuck it down that line and pull it, and just see what happens. It's like serving steak to people who are eating kind of like chicken nuggets for weeks on end. Do
you know what? I will.
Dude, seriously, like that's we get into that. Just try something completely different.
I'm a firm believer on a kill's kill. If something's working, and it's fly fishing, that's great. Yeah. Yep.
Exactly.
But Johnny, what you were saying there about, like, it's also about having the balls to kind of say, do you know what, I'm going to do something completely different.
Do the opposite of what everyone's doing. If people are fishing the same flies, Dara, at the same depth, if people are fishing, with a fast sinking line all day, and they're telling you, oh no, the fish are down, and they're all fishing size 10, or size 10 doubles or tubes or whatever, go and get a floating line and put on a micro treble and go through the pool and see what happens. And we've done it. We've done this at quite a few times in the Moy as well, where people have fished pools and the fish are there but they're not taken. And then there was a particular day last year where it was similar to that. Me and Yamil were there, and we just went, right, we're just going to put on the biggest sunrays we can find. Like, these things were like like 3-inch, 4-inch sun rays, and we absolutely, like, you couldn't strip fast enough. And I told one of the lads to put it on. 4 casts later, he was into a fish. We ended up with, I think, 8 fish between the 3 of us, all on sunrise. And the lads were, and everyone else was saying, no, you won't get fish today.
Oh, but it's amazing. It's using, but back to what you were saying earlier on, yeah, well, it's really funny, when you went and everybody was doing the double-handed and you could take a break and you went off and caught a fish in a 2.8. Was it nymphing, actually?
Yeah. It was,
so you went off, and it was sort of, okay, that's it. Now we have to go back and try and catch a double-hander.
Exactly.
Stop playing around there. Let's go back fishing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Hold on. Maybe I'm onto something here.
Stop stressing the fish. But look, the purpose of that trip, to be honest, it was to basically learn how to cast.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't mind going back to the double hander. But yeah, like Connor was like, all right, let's just go back and get the double hander, put the same name and try to cover that fish again. But I think it's great to have, the resources and the tools to do it. And just before we jump into the next question, something that I wanted to mention. During my 5 years in Ireland so far, I tried to basically build a group with most of the anglers are very young people, but we also have older anglers in the group. And it's all about fun, because at the end of the day, we blank more than anything. So my idea was to try to basically get to know as many people, as much as people as I could, and try to build that a small community of anglers who basically enjoy the day out rather than competing against each other, or, be a bit secretive about fly fishing or flies, which you also encounter people like that. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that.
That's just the boat anglers, Emma. Don't worry.
It's just boat anglers. It's only boat. It doesn't happen in any other type of fishing channel.
Tell us this, lads. I'm actually. How often would you be out salmon fishing?
Well, I'll be out at least 3 to 4 days a week. If it's during the week, I'll try to go, to the Daughter or the Tolka or whatever it's close to Dublin, or even the Slaney. And then during the weekend, I wouldn't mind driving up to the Omore for a day trip, or we've done it quite a few times. So I try to fish as much as I can, just because I don't have kids yet. So I'm taking the chance now that I have it.
Yeah. Make the most of it while you can.
Yeah. We keep saying this is our last year of freedom, because I think it's that's the excuse for using nowadays anyway.
Yeah. And what about yourself, Johnny?
Like I would, similar enough to Yamil there, I suppose. Living in the west of Ireland here, I wouldn't get out maybe salmon fishing as much as Yamil would. And the closest river to me is the Field. It's where I call it my adopted home river. And it's fine. I can get the ferry's about 40 minutes from here, and it's only about 15 minutes then from the ferry. So you can get there in an hour. But the only problem is with the Field, it's heavily water dependent. As are most of the Spate rivers here. So you're really waiting for conditions, and then the problem becomes when the conditions are there, you have to drop everything and go. So yeah, look, as much as I can over the last few years, as Yamil said there, we try and do so. We learned, again, this is all learning. We learn to fish the conditions. It's something that, it's a great piece of advice for anyone listening to this. We can talk about tactics and that now in a minute. But try and fish the conditions as much as you can. Try and fish on a dropping river that's dropping after a flood as much as you can. You can also get them in low water, but yeah, look, I try and get out, if I can, once a week. But you'll definitely increase your chances more if you only have that once a week. Try and ping it, to fish on the right conditions.
And that's what I did want to ask you. So are you guys, you're not booking beats in advance? Are you literally going, no. I want to go fishing Sunday, I'll check it out on Friday, maybe what conditions are. Jesus, the drowse is looking good, I'm going to head. Is it literally that? You
become kind of mini meteorologists in one sense. You become how, by looking outside, you're going, oh yeah, no, that rain, that rain won't rise a certain place. But what Yamil said there earlier, guys, is key as well. We're lucky enough, Yamil's the perfect salesman. He built up a network of contacts all throughout the country that, luckily enough, you can text and be like, guys, is it raining there? you know, it like, what's it looking like, you know? So, and vice versa. If I know that the conditions might be good down this side of the country, I let the lads know as well. So we would have had to start our book days and kind of gone down, and like, you know, we had a week last year on the Own Duff where we booked it for the week in Sheon Lodge, and we arrived and the river was literally unfishable for the week, you know. So we've learned, like, and look, that happens, but if you catch those rivers right, you know, you could have the best week of your life. So there's a bit of both. There's still, we kind of do like a couple of trips up to the ridge every year where we generally around the same week. We've been quite lucky the last few years. We've had very good conditions. But yeah, just again, mainly fishing to the conditions at the moment.
And Yamil, is there any favourites that you find yourselves kind of gravitating towards, you know, or you just don't care wherever the fish are?
I know what he's going to say here anyway.
Well, to be honest, in the last few seasons, I've been like I was able to join a syndicate on the Slaney, so the Slaney has been very, very good to me in the last couple of seasons. This season hasn't been great, not many fish, but it's a great river to fish. And then it's a bit further away from Dublin, but the O'More, it's the river that I probably will pick. It's a great river. It has something like it. Whenever you fish it or whenever you go around the river, I don't think it happens to everybody, but at least it happens to me. It's a special place. Even if you blank, it's a great place to be around, walking around. All the anglers that you meet are there as well. So those are probably going to be the two favorite rivers for me.
And Johnny?
Similar enough, yeah. The Owen Moore guys, I just love going up there. You can break. We were in Carmore with Brian at the start of the season after his expose on the area, and funnily enough, you're going to love this. I think they've had the worst year in about 30 years since. You know? So you can only imagine how that went down there. But yeah, the Owen Moore is incredible, guys. Just that drive into Bangor is something else. You know, it's a special place. And then yeah, for me as well. Then the field, guys. The field has been quite good to me in the last few years as a spring fishery. It's really, really nice, and some just pretty cool people down there as well. So yeah, the field and the Owen Moore are probably two of my favourites. We tried a few more our places this year. We were in Delphi and a few spots. We were actually there with one of your friends, Tom, John Somerville.
Oh, John Jr. Yeah.
So John had us out. Yeah. John had us out in the boat, chasing salmon around the lake for the day, which was great crack. But yeah, no, look, like Ireland in general, guys. Like I don't think people appreciate it, and it's been said in a few shows you've done, but like, you know, the quality of the fishing that we have in this country, and this is coming from, you know, seeing, you know, being in a few places and around the world, and like the quality and the affordability of the fishing we have here is huge as well. You know, the prices, some of the prices you look at in the UK, like it's ridiculous pricing, you know, to go salmon fishing, whereas here it's quite accessible. You know, it's quite accessible fishing. So yeah, look, it's a special place, Ireland. I hope people appreciate it for what we have here, you know.
And I think as well, the other great thing about it is the small size of the island, isn't it? Like, you know, wherever you are, you know, you can literally go, do you know what, if I need to be up in Donegal, go fishing tomorrow. If you're in a spot where you can drop everything and go up, you can be there in a few hours anyway.
Exactly.
It's all very manageable.
Tell me this, guy, sorry, I'm just going to break in, because it's so small. Do you let's say, do up a list of places that you haven't fished yet and sort of say, well, we've got to fish that? Or have you gotten to fish every place you want to?
I actually did that in the first 2 years. I got this book, Rivers of Ireland, by Peter O'Reilly.
Yeah.
And I was basically check marking all the rivers that they were in the book, just to basically have the experience, you know. And I kept telling the lads in the group, just, it's all about experience. Like, if you don't get a fish, if you get a fish, that's great, but it's all about having that experience of fishing a place. As Johnny mentioned there on the Own Duff, we went there, expensive week to blank, but you know, just getting the experience to know the place, to get to know people. So yeah, I definitely had that list, and I can say after 5 years, I did most of it. I still have a few that I didn't get to fish yet, but I fished most of them.
Johnny, any place left for you?
Not too much, Tom, to be honest. Yeah, I've been lucky enough. Yamil's dragging me around to most of these places, kicking and screaming. So
I'd say so. Arm behind your back. Yeah.
exactly.
This season's been a bit of a shit show for me, like in terms of just cancellations and work and blah blah blah. I won't get into it. But and then you're looking at the forums about, you know, the catches this year and so my question to you on this is, right, and I totally agree with you in terms of the quality of the fishing and the accessibility and the affordability. Do you find yourself starting to question a bit, going,
Yeah.
how much longer have I gotten this salmon angling lark here?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
definitely
That unless you're going to Iceland, Norway, and even there, I'm sure it's
Yeah.
a struggle as well.
Look,
Talk to me a bit about that, like.
A good description of it is the Gowla. When we were there, guys, the Gowla's down 75% this year on catch rates. They had 75% down. Like that's a lot. That's a lot per river like that. They had only about 1,000 fish or 1,200 fish landed on the river when we were there. The year before, they had nearly 4,000. You know, they were on like 3,800. So the Gowla's down 75%, and all the anglers we met from Sweden, Finland, Finnmark, which is the north, which is, you know, the famous Alta. The same catches have collapsed everywhere. In Ireland this year, like Yamil was talking about the Slaney there, like we know a lot of guys. I know one guy, David, he's a brilliant angler. He hammered the place for 37 days straight. And David's probably one of the best anglers that I know for salmon and didn't touch a fish. You know what I mean? And we've had the same here. We were lucky we got off the bus early enough this year, but the catch rates, guys, the fish just aren't there. You know, we were with Brian on Carramore, and we were with John on Delphi as well, Tom. And it's just like it's the same story everywhere there. The fish just are no longer there. You know,
it is very depressing, isn't it? Like you know, and like I admire you guys that, you know, like you're still catching. You know what I mean? You're going out, you're chasing the fish, but I just get that sense of you need to have to be able to put in those errors. You have to be flexible like that.
100%.
And even then, it could still be just pot luck, like, you know.
100%.
Yamil, tell us about. Are you kind of despondent about the?
Yeah, like in my case, again, I wouldn't know much how the salmon fishing was before I came to Ireland, but based on what I've been talking to people, you know, every year we were actually talking to Gareth a few weeks ago, and he was also mentioning that, you know, that except by 2020. Every other year he's seen and he's experienced a decline on the runs. On my short 5 years, I've seen a decline. So I can only imagine how bad it's going. If we look at, you know, 10, 20 years before. I hope it's just a cyclical thing. But it doesn't look like it's getting better, at least here. Just to give a little bit of background information, I recently moved to Spain, to the north of Spain, and the salmon rivers here in the north of Spain, the catch rates are very, very low, and they still open. So that's another chat that we have, but they're not getting fish, and it's not because they're not catching them, it's because they're just not here. They're just not here. And they mostly have a run of springers. They don't have a run of grills at all, and they're not here. So I think it's happening everywhere. I'm not a scientist. I wouldn't know exactly what is going on, but I can tell that in the short 5 years in Ireland, I've seen the decline in just so little years.
Yeah, it is. It's very true. Like, and it's, yeah, you just kind of, I know we've, you know, a couple of months left in the season, and how much is it going to pick up? Like, you guys tell me a bit about, you're up at the Ridge Pool. Like, have the numbers been down up there? Like, there was, you know, obviously fish being caught, but it's way down, is it?
Yeah, in the last few weeks, they're seeing a lot of fish running, but they haven't. We were talking to Paul Kelly, to Gareth. We have a group chat there that basically we put a few updates. Whoever's fishing it or whoever's in the river, yeah, it's very quiet. It's been very quiet for the last few weeks. Which, again, I don't want to get into a controversial topic, but I think the Moy, it's not, again, what it used to be, or what people talk about, what used to be before, but I think it doesn't help the fact that people are just basically killing fish after fish in that river. So One thing is the run that it's declining, and the other thing that we can control, as we say, control the controllables. We're probably not doing the best job when it comes to, help the run. You know,
And Johnny, what's your own experience of it
Yeah,
being
the
high?
saying there. Like I was actually chatting to Paul today. He was on the weir pool, and the only fish that was caught today was a fish by one of the seals. So yeah, would you believe it, guys? There's actually two seals have taken up residence
I've
the
heard
last
that,
week or
yeah.
so in the ridge
Where is
pool
this,
and
Johnny?
in on the ridge, Tom.
Yeah.
They've fully taken up residence. Like normally they'll drift in and out with the tide, but they're not even moving now. So there's been anglers, they're paying €125 for a half day on the ridge, and they go up there and there's two seals just high bosh and everything that's around the place. Like, they're you can see them. The seals are catching the fish. They're stressing the fish. So you're not going to capture that. And then, yeah, even Galway Weir guys again. Galway Weir seems to have been very, very poor this year. There is fish in it, but again, just very poor catch returns. I know a guy that was fishing there on Monday, and I think there was only one fish caught. Which in July, Tom, from Corrib, like one fish caught in prime time in July is like there's something gone seriously wrong, guys. Whatever's happened in the last, like last year's spring run wasn't too bad, but last year's grills run was very poor, and then this year's spring run has been catastrophic. So that's the same, that's your same cohort of fish that left us smolts together. So yeah, it's from a grills perspective. Most of the reports around the country, guys, have been pretty patchy as well this year. It just doesn't seem the last. Again, as Yamil said, it could be a cycle, but just looking at the recent EPA reports on water quality, and then you see these super trawlers kind of off the coast and that, and fish farms like Tom, where you are in Connemara. I stayed in Ballynahinch a couple of weeks ago, just actually stay over now. I wasn't fishing, unfortunately, but we went for a drive around the coast, and I could not believe, like 100 meters from these little small, the small creeks that the sea trout run, 100 meters from them are cages. Like I was like dumbstruck. I was like, how in God's name can you put a cage directly on the migratory route of an Andromeda's fish? Do you know what I mean? And so I think there's a lot and as Yamil says, maybe some of those things we can't control, besides corporate interests and that, but definitely once the fish make it into the river, I think there's probably a lot more that we could be doing in this country.
Like you use the word catastrophic, and this is the week that the United Nations was coming out, and they used words like the breakdown of the climate change. Like it's a breakdown we're witnessing, and that's shit scares me. Like when you're hearing that stuff.
Have you seen recently, guys? You've seen the marine heat waves going on at the moment in Europe, and I think in the Gulf of Mexico as well, around Florida. Like the water temperature was 35 degrees or something the other day. Like that's.
I was reading that off the Western Atlantic seaboard and the North Sea, it was 3 to 5 degrees above normal, and that's they're saying that's death to marine life.
Yeah. For fish that are used to cold water climates or cold water environments, a 3 to 5 degree difference in fishing temperature or in water temperature, exactly. Like it's going to kill everything.
But listen, I suppose before everybody drops off a cliff here and presses stop, I don't want to listen to any more.
I'm going to have to listen to some Leonard Cohen.
Or go brown trout fishing or something else. Tell us, I'm fascinated by low water. It's summertime, even the drought, where the rivers were so low. Yamil, you are the guru now of nymph fishing for
Argentinian guru.
Nymph fishing for salmon in Ireland.
Tell us a marauder.
The matador.
Oh yeah, like it.
The lads in Mayo call him Maradona, so there you go.
Excellent.
That's funny.
Tell us, how do you approach kind of when you're looking at kind of rivers that are low and everybody's going, there's nothing doing. What do you do?
Well, first of all, what I really like about low water, that normally the average salmon angler is not fishing. So basically you have the river for yourself. And what I try to do, as I mentioned earlier, I try to fish for trout. I'll try to do the same things that I will do to get trout, even though I'm expecting to hopefully hook a salmon. And that happened quite a few times while trout fishing. That's why every time I go to a river and it's low water, I tend to do the same thing that I will do for trout fishing. It could be, upstream nymphing, which now it's called ear nymphing. It could be even stripping small flies or even stripping nymphs the same way you fish them on the lakes, if it's still in deep water. And then basically try different things, because the fish are there, or the fish might be there, especially in deep pools. In low water, fish are going to be stuck in a way in deeper pools. So even if you cannot see the fish, you can cover the fish. And that's what I do with the nymphs. I got a few fish a few years ago on the Slaney when the water was very, very low, while trout fishing. Again, I wasn't actually looking or trying to get a salmon, but I knew there could be a salmon in the pool. That's why I was tend to put a thicker tippet just in case. And then nymphing, stripping sun rays, small sun rays, or even fishing bombers, which again, it's a thing that not many people probably do enough, I'll say, and that's why they don't get them on bombers. It's because they don't use them enough, not because they don't work. And it goes back to what we were just saying about traditional techniques and tradition in fishing. I didn't have much experience with bombers before I moved to Ireland, but during the lockdown, I had a lot of time to watch videos on YouTube, tie flies, and once we were able to fish more and travel a bit more, I remember 2 years ago on the Omor, I spotted a fish, and we were with Johnny's friend as well, Thomas, who spotted a few fish. I gave a bomber to Thomas, and he had 2 salmon within 15 to 20 minutes on bombers, which we couldn't believe it. Like, these are things that you dream of, or you pay big money, in Canada maybe to do it. So that shows you that you can still get them on different techniques. It's just a matter of be willing to do it,
But tell me this, Yamil, for those who wouldn't know, how do you fish the bomber?
So what I'll do, it really depends on how fast the water. First, if you can spot the fish, that's basically 50% chances that you'll have a reaction from the fish, just because the fish is there. But if you cannot see the fish, but you expect that the fish might be in that part of the pool, I'll say, depending on the speed of the water, what I like to do is cast kind of like square or even a bit more upstream, let it drift, kind of like a dead drift. And as it's starting to basically drag a bit, start to accelerate, basically what you do on the lakes, or what Brian was teaching me on the lakes for salmon, basically lifting the rod a bit, speeding up the bomber. And that's usually what triggers, in my experience, to have a fish to take. Or even sometimes if it's still in deep water, just having a dead drift the same way you will do with a dry fly for trout. I don't think it's as effective as skating the bomber or give it a bit of movement, but it could at least react. And if they react, they might take.
Try it. That's what you're saying. Try it.
Exactly.
And then another thing now, I was wondering, either Yamil or Johnny, when you go nymphing for them, what's your setup? Are you using a 2-way rod, or because now that you can get them nymphing, have you upped the weight of the rod accordingly, or do you still go at it with the 2-weight?
I'll let Yamil take this one, because he's the Spanish nymphing master. But I remember he was driving me crazy because he kept on going after salmon like springers with 3-weight rods, and it was like,
right.
And once the fish starts running, Tom, on like the 3-weight, like it's like these are 15, 16 pound fish, and I'm just like, why did you do that again? I put strong tippet on. I'm like, that doesn't make a difference.
This is where my question is coming from, Johnny.
So look, Yamil, I'll let Yamil tell you about his new setup, his custom setup, actually.
Yeah.
So if you ask me what I enjoy the most, it's fishing with a 2-weight or 3-weight. But in fairness for the fish, especially because we fish, most of the rivers we fish are catch and release, you want to bring in that fish, especially if it's a springer, as fast as possible. So the setup that I will use, or that I've been using so far, it's a 7-weight, 10-foot rod with just a floating line, or just a big, long tapered leader, 12, 15 footer, and just heavy nymphs. When I say heavy, it could be from 4 millimeters up to 6.5 millimeter tungsten. It's hard to get them, but you can get them from websites in Poland or Spain.
You get them.
Yeah, you'll get them. And that's how usually what I do for nymphing. A 7-weight, 10-foot. If I can choose, I'll definitely pick a 2-weight or 3-weight, but chances are you're not going to land the fish.
What about the riffle hitch?
The riffle hitch, I tried it a few times, but to be honest, going back to the bomber, I basically fish the bomber in riffly water the same way you'll fish a riffle hitch. I hadn't I hooked a few fish on the hitch, but the catch ratio wasn't the land ratio wasn't great. Normally, because you're using a single hook, very small, and the take it's very aggressive. So most of the time you hook the fish and you lose them right away. So as you know, it's hard enough to hook a fish, so you want to play the fish a bit longer, at least be able to land it. So I don't fish it again. I don't fish it as much as I should, and just because I get comfortable with other techniques.
If anybody's listening, like in terms of, is there any kind of people you'd recommend online to kind of look out for in terms of innovative methods or new stuff that you're seeing? Anybody like that you think?
To be honest, most of our fishing trips, it's all about having fun. So when nobody's getting a fish, especially on the Omar or the Ridgeful, when we go, it's like, why don't you put this? Why don't you fish this? Why don't you put a articulated streamer, and boom, something happens. So it's more about having fun for us rather than thinking about or trying to see what other people are doing. We should definitely be doing that, but it's more kind of a hobby for us, the fishing.
Do you know what, guys? I think, like, in fairness, and chatting to you is for nearly an hour, it's enlightening. It's brilliant hearing just the passion for it. You know what I mean? Yeah, you want to catch fish, and yeah, you go after it, and yeah, you'll try new things, but it is actually about just enjoying yourself as well and making the most of it. So which leads us to our final question, which we ask all our guests. And Johnny, I'll ask, I don't know if you have one each. To start with yourself, Johnny, what your most memorable fish?
We've a joint fish.
Yeah. Oh, a joint one, okay.
That's a first.
That's exactly. This is a first.
We've a joint fish. Yeah, this is a funny one, guys. So leading on from what we were talking about earlier, me and Yamil were fishing together on the Dodder a bit, and I think I'd said to Yamil I was going off down to the Blackwater for a casting lesson. And now, Dara, I mean, I hadn't a clue. Yamil was already a good caster, but I hadn't a clue how to use a double hander. So I had an 11-foot Shakespeare switch rod with, I think it was some form of a sea fishing line that I got in Southside stuck on it. And we went off down to Glenda's, and Glenda saw the two of us Egypts coming down, and she was like, right, good. I think she had a couple of American guests that day, and she was kind of like, right, go down there to that side of the fishery, because we tried to, the first thing we did was we tried to wade through the river, like basically where the fish were meant to be, and we were out in the middle of the river, hand in hand, like, but anyways, right, we were down in the island stream, and we were kind of messing around more than anything else. I hadn't a clue what we were at. Yamil, to be fair, hadn't a clue what we were at either. And Yamil asked me to have a go on my rod. So I was like, right, sure, look, go on, off you go. And the typical thing, exactly, Tom, the typical thing that happens, never give your fishing partner your rod. So we were there anyway, and I'll never forget, Yamil was casting across and down, and the fly had come to the end of the drift, right in by the bank. And Yamil had the rod in underneath his arm. And we were chatting. I had my arms folded like this. Yamil had the rod in underneath. And next thing, all hell broke loose. Basically, the rod went. I went in after the rod, fully fell into the river. Phone gone, flies gone, everything in such a panic. Yamil managed to grab the rod, and yeah, lo and behold, we landed a 14-pound sea lice springer on the island stream. And yeah, to this day we still laugh about it, but you should have seen the look on Glenda's face when we went back up to her and went, look what we got, like excited school children. She couldn't believe it. You're like, these two Egypts are after go down here now, they haven't to hope, we don't know what they're at. But yeah, for me that was despite the soaking I got. I remember I had to drive into Permine by phone afterwards. I got such a drenching, but yeah, that was definitely the most memorable one. And then I remember we thought, sure, this is easy. We may as well become professional salmon anglers now. And I don't think I touched the fish for 2 years. So there we go. Yeah, that was my most memorable one anyway.
Oh, stop! That's a brilliant one. That absolutely brilliant. A joint
effort. Exactly.
Yeah.
And Yamil, before we let you go, so you're in Spain now. Is that your move over there now?
Yeah, I moved with, like I said, my wife, she's Spanish, so I got a job here in Spain. So I moved recently. I'll be leaving here, but I'm only an hour and a half flight away from Ireland. So I'll be coming back whenever there's a bit of rain. I'll just fly back to Dublin, have a friend pick me up at the airport and fish at least for a day or two, and back to Spain.
Yeah, well, I wonder how long that'll last.
Well, before I have kids, I'll be able to do it, I'll say.
Well, because in fairness, my question was going to be like, are you going to be able to get back to Ireland? So, like, fair play, you're still going to make the effort.
To be honest, like I mentioned before, I have a great group. We created a nice group, very, very diverse. We have people from Poland, people from Ireland in the group, and they're all about, having fun, enjoying, making some trips. So I'm definitely going to be back for fishing or blanking, as we say.
Johnny, what's the plan for the remainder of the season?
We'll see. There's a bit of water down here at the moment now, Dara, so I might have to take a sneaky little trip. Maybe tomorrow somewhere. So yeah, we'll see. I think there was reports of quite a few fresh fish seen coming up the river. So yeah, do that, and then look, as we said, just take it as it comes. If anywhere gets a bit of a run over the next month or so. July still tends to be pretty good. August everywhere for some reason on salmon. Salmon fishing just dies out a bit, and then look, see what September brings. Going maybe chase. I always try and finish the season up around the Owen Moor or something in September. So we'll see what happens.
Well, very best of luck with it. And then, sure, doesn't be long coming around then once January kicks in and the drowse and everything.
Don't.
Going around and around.
Around and around.
Exactly.
And then you have the Gala to look forward to as well.
Exactly.
Brilliant. Well, listen, Johnny and Yamil, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I'd love to catch up with you again. It's just...
Definitely, Dara. Anytime, guys, genuinely, and Tom as well.
Yeah.
I know it was a bucket list there if you listened over the last few months. We need to start ticking those off.
Well, the Gala is another one now. I'm adding to that now. So.
And that's definitely
more than welcome. It's an open invite next year.
Brilliant. Well, Yamil and Johnny, thanks again for your time.
Thank you very much, Dara and Tom.
Our thanks to Johnny, Casey and Yamil Turcuman for joining us on the show. Don't forget to rate, review and follow the Ireland on the Fly podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast from.
Plus, you can keep up to date on IrelandOnTheFly.com as well as on Instagram, and myself and Tom will be back with another episode about the people and places of fly fishing in Ireland.